My name is Marion. I am 67 years old, a retired school secretary, and a widow of nearly 5 years. I thought I had already known what heartbreak felt like, until the day I came home early and saw my own son breaking into my house. The cab stopped in front of my driveway, and the first thing I noticed was the large white moving truck parked outside. Its back door was open boxes stacked high, the afternoon sun glinting off the metal. For a split second, I thought one of my neighbors was moving out, but then I saw Daniel, my only son, kneeling by my front door. A wrench in his hand. Next to him was his wife, Cara, holding a screwdriver, both frozen like children, caught with their hands in the cookie jar. My breath caught in my chest. Daniel. I managed my voice, trembling. What are you doing? He turned pale as paper. The tools fell from his hands with a sharp clang. Cara opened her mouth, but no words came out. I took one step closer and looked toward the truck. My late husband's old radio, the china set we bought for our 10th anniversary, my mother's jewelry box. My heart stopped. Mom, you weren't supposed to be here, Daniel stammered. No, I said, the anger slowly overtaking the shock. But I am. That morning had started like any other. I woke up at 6, brewed my usual cup of coffee, and checked my suitcase for the 3rd time. I was supposed to fly to Phoenix to visit my younger sister Elaine. She had been calling me for months, insisting I needed a change of scenery. Marion, you've been cooped up in that house for too long. She'd say, come stay with me for a couple of weeks, clear your mind. I finally agreed. After all, it had been years since I'd left Cleveland for anything, other than doctor's appointments or grocery runs. The house, though filled with memories of my late husband, started to feel like a cage. I packed light, a few dresses, a photo of Richard, my favorite book. The airport was crowded as usual. I found a seat near the gate and tried to distract myself with a crossword puzzle. At 10:15, an announcement came. Over the speakers. Attention passengers on Flight 427 to Phoenix. Due to unexpected maintenance issues, this flight has been cancelled. A sigh rippled through the waiting area. People grumbled. Phones came out, complaints started. But in that moment, something deep inside me whispered, go home. It wasn't logic, it was instinct. Maybe a woman's intuition. Maybe something greater. I called a cab and rode back through familiar streets. The maple trees had begun to turn gold, the same colour as Richard's hair used to be. I looked out the window, uneasy though I couldn't explain why. I just knew I wasn't meant to leave that day. As soon as I stepped out of the cab, the uneasiness that had followed me from the airport hardened into pure dread. The moving truck sat heavy and silent in the driveway, its engine still ticking. The afternoon air felt colder than it should have been. I pulled my suitcase along the walkway, every step slower than the last. Daniel was crouched low by the lock, focused, unaware of my presence. Cara's head snapped up first, her eyes widening in disbelief. Mom! She gasped, her voice cracking. Daniel turned and froze the wrench, slipping from his hand and clattering onto the steps. For a moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the echo of that wrench rolling in the dirt. What are you doing? I asked, my tone calm but trembling underneath. Mom, please let me explain, Daniel said quickly, his voice hollow. Explain. I took a step forward. Why are you trying to break into my home? Cara stepped forward, stammering. We were just helping. I cut her off by breaking the lock. My eyes moved toward the open truck, where I could see my dining room chairs, the small side table Richard had refinished, and a pile of boxes labelled kitchen. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the sound of the passing cars. Mom, you weren't supposed to be back yet, Daniel finally whispered. Clearly I said, my voice tightening. And what was supposed to happen while I was gone? I walked past them without another word and climbed up the ramp, into the back of the truck. The smell of old wood and packing tape hit me first. Then came the sight that twisted my stomach into knots. There, stacked and wrapped in blankets, were the pieces of my life. My wedding china, Richard's radio, the crystal figurines that had belonged to my grandmother. Every object told a story, and every story had been carelessly boxed away. I turned slowly toward Daniel and Cara, who stood at the base of the ramp, looking like two strangers I'd never met. How long, I asked quietly. How long have you been planning this? Cara lowered her eyes. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, unable to meet my gaze. Mom, it's not what you think, he started, voice cracking. Oh, isn't it? I said, gesturing around me. Because what I think is that my own son was stealing from me. We needed help, he blurted. Things have been rough, we thought. You thought I'd never know? I interrupted, the words sharp as glass. You thought you could take what you wanted, and I'd come home to an empty house. I pointed toward a box near the front of the truck. Is this the first time? Silence. Answer me, Daniel. He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. No, Mom. We came a few times before when you were out. My chest ached, and every time you took a little more, I stepped down from the truck, my pulse racing, but my voice stayed steady. You're not touching another thing, I said. Not until someone else is here to see this. Kara's eyes widened. What do you mean someone else? I mean a witness. I pulled my phone from my purse and scrolled to Nora Whitfield's number. Nora had lived 2 doors down for 20 years. She was practical sharp and didn't miss a detail. When she answered, I tried to keep my voice calm. Nora, could you come over right now, please? She didn't ask questions on my way. I ended the call and pressed record on my phone's voice memo app, the small red light glowing at the top of the screen. Since you both like to explain, things I said evenly, you can explain them. While I record, Kara's face went pale. Daniel swore. Load hard, within minutes, Nora appeared at the end of the driveway wearing her gardening gloves and an expression that could cut glass. She took one look at the scene. The open truck, the tools on the ground, Daniel's posture, and folded her arms. Good Lord, Marion, she said, what on earth is going on? They were helping themselves, I replied. Daniel looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. Mom, please, start unloading. I said every last box right now, because when the police come, I want them to see exactly what you tried to take. While Daniel and Kara began returning the boxes, I pulled out my phone again and dialed a locksmith. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice stayed firm. Mr. Alvarez, it's Mary Ann Ellis. I need every lock in my house changed today. He recognized my voice from years ago when he'd replaced the back door knob after Richard passed, all the locks he asked, surprised. All of them, I said, front, back, and garage. I'll pay extra if you can come this afternoon. By the time I ended the call, Nora was standing beside me, watching Daniel struggle to carry the heavier boxes back inside. You sure you don't want me to call the police? She asked quietly. Not yet, I said. I want everything back in my house first, then I'll decide. Neighbours had begun peeking from behind their curtains. The quiet street buzzed with whispers. I kept my chin up, let them look. I had nothing to hide. Mom, Daniel called, weakly from the porch. Please, we can explain. Don't waste your breath. I answered my tone. Even. The only explanation I need is why my home looks like a storage sale. Mr. Alvarez arrived 40 minutes later in a white van. He gave me a sympathetic look as I handed him the keys. Just change them all. I repeated, I want new ones before sunset. It was the first decision that day that made me feel safe. Again, the next morning, after a night of little sleep, I called my lawyer, Thomas Greer. I'd worked with him years ago when Richard and I drew up our wills. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm and professy. Onal as always, Marion, what happened? He asked after I gave him a brief summary. I need to make sure my son can't touch anything. That belongs to me ever again, I said. When I arrived at his downtown office, he listened as I told him everything from the cancelled flight to the moving truck to Daniel's confession. I could see disbelief in his eyes, but he didn't interrupt when I was finished. He took a deep breath and asked for my power of attorney documents. I handed him the folder I had signed 2 years earlier after my hip surgery. He frowned as he read, Marion, this power of attorney gives Daniel nearly full control of your assets, he said slowly. Bank accounts, property transfers, even real estate sales. It's far broader than what's normally used for a temporary medical recovery. My stomach dropped. He told me it was just so he could pay my bills while I was healing. Thomas looked at me sympathetically. Unfortunately, this would allow him to sell your home without needing your direct approval. We need to revoke it immediately. he began, typing a new document right there in front of me. Once we file this, Daniel loses all legal authority, and I'll send a notice to your bank, utilities, and the county records office today. For the first time since the confrontation, I felt the faintest trace of control return. A week passed before Daniel reached out. He called one evening, his voice tight, the kind that comes from rehearsing excuses. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, "You can talk. I'll listen." He started with the story he'd been hiding. He'd lost his job 8 months ago, not 3 as he'd told me before. The severance had run out and the bills had piled up. He tried to make it sound like desperation, not deception. "I thought I could fix things before you found out," he said. "Then Kara started pushing. She said we could sell a few of your things, just until we caught up." Kara suggested that I asked quietly. He hesitated. "She said the house was worth a fortune, that you didn't need all that space. She found someone who could handle the paperwork if we used the power of attorney." The words made my skin crawl. "Handle the paperwork," I repeated. "You mean sell my home behind my back?" "Mom, I swear I didn't agree to that. I didn't stop her from talking about it. For a long moment I said nothing. I could hear his breathing on the other end, uneven like a boy waiting for punishment. "Daniel," I said finally, "I raised you to ask for help, not to steal it. You chose silence over honesty." He started to cry, then quietly, the way grown men do when they're too ashamed to make noise. But I didn't comfort him. Some lessons had to settle in the silence they created. The next day I met with Thomas again. I told him about Daniel's call and his so-called explanation. He listened quietly, then opened a new file on his computer. "Marion," he said, "we can turn this into a legal restitution agreement. It's not about revenge, it's about accountability." He explained that the document would list every stolen item, its estimated value, and the total Daniel owed. It would give him 30 days to pay or face criminal charges. He would also have to sign before a notary, ensuring that the agreement was legally binding. It sounded cold but necessary. I nodded. "Do it." 2 days later, Daniel came to Thomas's office. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling. He didn't argue. Didn't even look up while Thomas read the terms aloud. When it was time to sign, he did so quietly, his pen scratching across the paper like a confession. When the notary stamped the final page, Thomas slid me a copy. "This gives you full protection," he said. "If he fails to pay, we proceed immediately." Daniel turned toward me, eyes red. "I'll make it right, Mum," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I held the paper close to my chest. "You'll make it legal first," I replied. For the first time in weeks, I walked out of an office, feeling steady, not happy, not forgiving, but safe. The next 30 days felt like an invisible trial, one that tested not just Daniel's resolve but my heart. Each week, I received a small envelope in the mail. Inside was cash and a handwritten note. Week 1, $1,200. Week 2, $1,500. The handwriting was shaky, rushed but genuine. Daniel picked up 2 jobs, a night shift at a warehouse and a part-time position at a gas station. He sold his car and started riding a bike to work. I learned all this from Nora, who saw him pedaling through the neighborhood before dawn. Kara, on the other hand, disappeared from sight. A few neighbors mentioned she'd moved back to her sister's place. I didn't ask questions. Some silence is better than truth. Each time I opened those envelopes, I felt both pride and pain. Pride that he was trying, pain that it had come to this. I kept every note in a drawer by my bed, a strange kind of diary documenting his penance. At night, sleep was hard to come by. I would sit by the window, watching the porch light flicker, thinking about the fine line between justice and forgiveness. One evening, Nora joined me for tea. She looked at the stack of envelopes and said softly, "Justice and family aren't enemies, Marion, but they're not twins either." Her words sank deep. I realized she was right. Punishing Daniel wouldn't bring peace, but pretending nothing happened would only open the door for it to happen again. By the end of the month, Daniel had paid back nearly $10,000. The house was quiet again, but my heart hadn't settled on what to do next. Not yet. On the 30th day, Daniel showed up at my door. He looked thinner, his clothes worn, and his hands rough from long hours of work. He carried a small brown envelope and set it on the porch, railing. "There's 10,000 in there," he said quietly. "It's everything I could manage." I nodded but didn't reach for it right away. "Do you know what hurts the most, Daniel? It's not the money, it's the fact that you thought I'd never find out that you thought you had the right." He lowered his eyes. "I don't have any excuses left, Mum. I just want to make things right." I took a slow breath. "Then, here's how you start. The rest of what you owe will be repaid in time, but not with money. You'll do repairs around the house, drive me to appointments, and have dinner with me once a week, and there will be no more keys. You visit only when invited. One mistake, and I press charges. Do you understand?" He nodded, his throat tight. "I understand." For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility, maybe even remorse. He reached for a hug, but I stepped back. "Not yet," I said softly. "Trust isn't built in a single day. It's earned back piece by piece." That night I placed the envelope in the drawer beside his other notes. It wasn't closure, but it was a beginning. Months passed, the seasons shifted, and the house slowly began to feel like mine again. The locks gleamed with new brass, the walls no longer echoed with tension, and even the air seemed lighter. Some items never returned: my mother's gold brooch, Richard's old toolbox, but I stopped, counting what was gone. Instead, I started noticing what remained. Daniel kept his word. He came every weekend, fixing the porch railing, trimming the hedges, repainting the shutters. We rarely spoke of what had happened, but his actions spoke louder than any apology. Bit by bit, the silence between us turned from guilt to understanding. Sometimes when we'd finish a project, we'd sit on the porch with coffee saying little. He'd tell me about his new job at a construction firm, how hard it was to start over, and I'd nod, proud but cautious. I didn't give him his key back, and he never asked for it. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, Daniel looked at me and said, "Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness." I smiled faintly. "Maybe not yet," I said, "but you're earning my respect again. That's a start. I've learned that forgiveness isn't something you give, it's something you grow into. And peace, real peace, comes when you stop trying to rewrite the past and start protecting your future." I once believed. Heartbreak only came from loss, but I was wrong. Sometimes it comes from the ones you gave everything to. Yet, even then, especially then, you must choose yourself. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's reclaiming your peace. And peace, I've learned, is the quiet strength of a woman who refuses to let betrayal define her. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value every story and every voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Tears and Strength and share this video with your friends.